Deciding who to summon in a gacha game is a very common problem players will face, especially for free-to-play who have very limited resources. In the most recent banners of 1.0, we got two great DPS units, and in 1.1, we're getting two really good supportive units with a debuffer and a healer. In 1.2, we will then be getting two more DPS units, and with this pattern, it has made me sort of wonder. If you are free to play, would support units always be generally a better investment, or is DPS more important? Or maybe it doesn't even really matter. That's a topic we'll be discussing in this video, but before we do, if you want to see more Honkai style content, do consider subscribing to the channel. Now before we start this discussion and me sharing my opinions, this is a rather subjective thing. Whether a support or a DPS is more important largely depends on your own account. If you have good supports and lack damage, then DPS is likely better for you, and the opposite will be true as well. The idea that you should summon whoever you want also comes into play here, as we get enough free characters that somewhat cover the general player's needs. With that out of the way, let's talk about which is more important, a support or a DPS. The idea behind this separation of opinion largely stems from power creep. If you're not sure what that is, basically, in games where new characters or skills are regularly released, there is a chance that a new character is stronger or better than past ones. When this pattern repeats, the more a game ages, the weaker earlier characters get, eventually making them obsolete in favor of newer characters. For example, if you played Genshin Impact, Diluc, who is a pyro DPS, was considered a must-have when the game first launched. But later on, with characters like Hu Tao, he has largely been dethroned. Now this is just a numbers thing. I'm sure some people still use Diluc for one reason or another, but on paper, he doesn't function as well for the same job of doing damage. Power creep affects DPS characters far more than supports, because outpacing damage is really a matter of having better scaling. If the first character does damage based on 50% of their attack, and a week later a new character comes out who does 70%, then they automatically become better with other factors being constant. The only circumstance in which they don't immediately get dethroned is if that DPS has some unique mechanic only they have. So the value of a character and how long lasting a unit is relates to the uniqueness of their kit overall. Seela, for example, is able to give herself more turns as she kills something, which is something no other DPS character can currently do. But most other DPS characters don't have a unique mechanic, and most are just straight damage dealers, and why they are more prone to power creep. Support characters, on the other hand, often have multiple unique things only they can do in fulfilling their role. Let's take Civil Wolf as an example, who is a debuffer. Much like Pela, she can do defense shred as well, but also she can add a weakness to an enemy. There is currently no other character that can do this, and in order for you to power creep this particular function, you would need to have this new character add 2 more weaknesses or something, for example. That said, support units are not immune to power creep, but for support units, the power creep comes in the form of additional utility. For example, if you have 2 healers and one just heals while the other one can heal, shield, cleanse and buff all in one kit, then the first one becomes less valuable comparatively. So to compare, in order to power creep a DPS, it's the numbers that are largely at play, as most DPS kits are designed to help them deal more damage. Support units, however, vary between character, and so if you have that one character that can do it all, the chances of them being overtaken is much less. Take Harmony characters for example. While Bronya is considered to be one of the best characters in game, there are situations where Ting Yun would be preferred as she brings a different functionality. Based on what we've seen and how power creep works, the patterns seem to favor supports being better in the long term due to how difficult it is to replace them without functionally breaking the game. Again, power creeping a DPS unit is easier as most DPS kits focus on getting the most damage out. The exception to this is, as I've mentioned, if you have a DPS character that also have some utility attached to their kit. So going back to the original question, which group is better to summon for in general? Basically, on a newer account with lesser options, a support seems to be the better choice, as you can lightly slot a defense shredder or healer into many different teams, while a DPS would need to be changed out to exploit elemental weaknesses or mechanics. This means that you get more value from one single support summon compared to a DPS. But don't misunderstand me here. I'm not saying that all DPS characters are bad and you should never summon for them. All the support characters in the world is not gonna help you clear content if you can't defeat the enemies. All I'm saying is that once you have a good roster of reliable healers, buffers, and debuffers, it's unlikely that you would need to upgrade them for a significant amount of time, since they can work with any team and are less prone to be replaced. You will still need DPS characters to balance out your team, so just keep that in mind. Because everyone's teams and rosters are different, it's really on you to balance out which to summon for really. I'm just saying that supports tend to last slightly longer and can help enable team building for your particular roster. Personally, my own plans are to build out a reliable group of support characters and only later on start collecting DPS units, while in the meantime using whatever I happen to get for free. Now, I'm in no way telling you that this is how you must play. I just wanted to explore the idea of which group would bring more benefits, given I often hear that support units have better longevity. But as I mentioned at the start, it largely depends on what you need for your team and what characters or playstyles you personally enjoy. There's no sense in summoning for a debuffer if you don't like that playstyle. End of the day, you can summon for whoever you want and play whatever team you like. So which camp do you belong to? Summon for supports, or summon for DPS, or summon for whatever you need at the time? Let me know in the comments and I'll end the video here. If you enjoyed it, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. As usual, have a nice day ahead.